Alright, in this video I want to show you a slightly different type of series that I'm using here to show the number of days in the month. On the right hand side, this is the traditional series where I have the current day of the month a little bit bigger than the other days and I have a different color. Over here on the left hand side is the component that I have made. It is technically not a series, but it still kind of looks like a series, right? And the main difference here is this. The request I got was that the user wanted to gradually build up in size to that current day, and then notice the size does decrease again. Now before we dive into the actual tutorial, let me show you what this component can do, the way you can customize it. For now, I have it set up to show the days of the month. If you're real good with coding and doing a little bit of math, you can actually apply batteries with this. The seconds, I think seconds would look really cool. And speaking of that, let me go ahead and show you why. This gradual dates component, you can find this in my free components folder. And if I head on over to globals, I'm going to go ahead and change just a few things real quick. I'm going to cut this test on. Now that's going to definitely change the way this looks. And I'm going to come here and I'm going to change this test num. Imagine if this was seconds. You would actually have a slightly animated effect as time went on. Now this is just for testing purposes. And I did this while I was creating this component to make sure everything was working the way it should. So we are seeing the size changes. The sizes are still changing. And then right here at the end, there's our 1. Now bumping this back on up. Also inside of here, the test total. So, what is all this test stuff? The testing, again, is what I was using while I created the component to make sure everything worked the way it should. So if I come in here to test, since my test is on, my test number is 16 and the test total, that's what that stands for. I do have 24 numbers down here. Now if I bump this up to say, let's go up to 30, notice we do have 30 down here, and I can actually mimic the current day of the month, which is the 23rd. So, we kind of have the same series going on, but we have this wave effect. Something else we can do here, if I come down to spread, I can influence more numbers or less numbers with this size transition. For example, if I lower the spread down to 2, it's only going to influence one number below it and one number above it. Now, if I make it 3, it's going to influence 1, 2, 3, or 2 numbers below it and 2 numbers above it. So think of this number here, 3. If we count this number, the actual number 23, count that as 1, 2, 3, and then we go the other way, 1, 2, 3. That's a way we can think about it, and that's how the math's working. And I'm going to show you the math right here in a little while. Now, if we raise this number up even more, you can see that we are influencing even more numbers with that size transition. So with something like that, and then I come back here and I change the test number, now we can see that wave effect changing more numbers as we go down or up in this series. I'm going to bump the test total on down a little bit, and now let's talk about some of the globals inside of here. Norm size and max size. Norm size is the smallest size the text will ever be. So notice as I do this, the numbers that are not being influenced by this wave here, I'm raising that size. So think of it as the minimum size, but when I first created it, I called it norm size. And now if I lower that back down to 30, all of these numbers that are not being influenced by this wave will have a size of 30. Now for max size of 70, that's going to be the largest size we have. In this case, since my test is on, I'm just testing things out, this 17 will have a maximum size of 70. I'm going to come back down here and I'm going to take my spread and I'm going to knock the spread back down to 4 just so I can show you how the math is working right here in a minute. Other things that we have going on inside of here, the current num. Now this can return one of two things. So let me go into this text global. And I'm using the realm, the math utilities realm, just to get rid of any potential decimals. And I'm testing to see if GVTest is on, then I want to return the test num. If GVTest is not on, I want to return the current day of the month. That's what DFD stands for. Now, if you're good with the codes inside of Kustom, this is where you can change this to return the current second or minute or the battery percentage or anything like that. But for now, either I'm going to return test num or the current day of the month. And since I do have test on, I am returning that test num of 17. And as you can see, if I go back into current num again, that's exactly what we're seeing. Now, just to show you how this code works, if I cut test off, it's going to change this over here, and now my current num is going to be the current day of the month, which is the 23rd. For now, I'm just going to cut the test back on. So test num, and then total n. What is total n? That's the total number of numbers that we want to see. Now that can be one of two things again. It's either going to be the test total, or since I'm talking about the days in the month, I might want to return the total number of days in the current month. That's what DFO does. That is a lowercase o, by the way. So if GV test is on, I want to return the test total. I did change that a few minutes ago as I was showing you how you can customize some things. But if GV test is not on, I want to return the total number of days in the current month. Right now we're returning a 25, and that is because our test is on. Notice test is on, and therefore my test total is 25. Just to show you how things work, if I come up here and cut the test off, and then come back here to total n, total numbers, now we're going to return that 30, which is the total number of days in the current month. So now let's come on down to the num. Now, if you don't change any of the items in the actual component the way I have them ordered, you shouldn't have to change this. Now, basically all this thing does is it's going to return a 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, all the way up to how many ever overlap groups you copy and paste inside of this component. And these overlap groups actually sit inside of a stat group. This is how we get our numbers very quickly. Now notice I am doing SI module index, comma 1 plus 1. The plus 1 is what's going to, instead of us getting 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, we will actually get 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Now, if you're not familiar with the module index, then that can be a little bit confusing. I encourage you to check out some of my videos on the SI module index. Now, the size, I want to come back to that in a minute. I showed you the spread, and then we have these other two globals where you can pretty much see what they're going to do. Either we have what's called the other color or the current color. I'll show you where we can apply those right here in a moment. Now, what I'm going to do here, let's bear in mind that we do have a norm size of 30 and a max size of 70, and our spread is currently set to 4. If I go over to my items, and I come into the stat group inside of this component, and I'm going to go ahead and come down here to the 23, just scrolling through all of these overlap groups. Here's our 23. If I go to that text and I look at the size of that 23, notice it's a 70. That's the max size. Now let's do a little bit of math here in our head before I show you the math code to find the size of all these other numbers. My spread was 4, and what I'm doing is I'm going from 70, and then once I hit right here at 19, notice 19 has the same text size as all these other ones, and that's that norm size of 30. So I'm going from 30 up to 70. So let's think about an equal increment in terms of size. If this is 30 and I have a spread of 4, this would be 40, 50, 60, 70, 60, 50, 40, and then back to 30. And just to show you that's exactly what's going on here, let me back away one overlap group to 22. Let's go look at its size, and notice we have a 60. Now this is based off of 3 things: the norm size, the max size, and the spread. So bearing that in mind, let me come back and show you that code inside of globals, the one that I skipped, the size. So let's look at the code. Now this code may look kind of crazy, and it actually is, but here's how it works. The first thing I'm testing to see is GV the num equal to the current num? If that's the case, for example, whatever day I'm on, if it was the 23rd of the month, which today it is, and the number 23, the num and the current num will be equal, and I want to use that max size. Now, if it's not, then we're either going to be a number above or a number below. And what I want to find is how far is that number from the current number? Now, since it could be above or below, I need to use the absolute value. And I actually want to test and see, is that difference less than or equal to the spread that I pick? Now, remember earlier in the video, I showed you that you could adjust the spread, which would make the wave, I guess, longer or shorter. And if this difference between the current num and the num is less than or equal to the spread, then I want to alter that size somehow because it's within a certain number of numbers of the current number. So I want to change that size. I want to make it, 40, 50, 60 or something like that. Well, how do I want to alter it? I want to take the norm size, whatever that may be, and I want to add on to that a percentage of the difference between the max size and the norm size. That's why there's so many globals in here, because you may want your max size and norm size to be different than what I have inside of the component. You may want your spread to be different than what I have inside of the component. So these codes look crazy, but I'm trying to give you the ability to customize this to your liking. What I would encourage you to do here, honestly, is to take the numbers that I have currently set up and crunch it out and see what's going on. Lots of math, I gotta do it. I'm a math guy. So there's that code. Now, if you come back into the items one more time, let me just go to any one of these overlap groups. They're all the same. Once you create one, you can copy and paste because, again, that's the power of the SI module index. So inside of this overlap group, the very first one, if I go to its layer, I have a visible code. And basically what we're testing here is if the index of that overlap group, if it's less than or equal to the total n, the total number of numbers that we want. For example, if you're displaying the total number of numbers in a month, for April, that would be 30. So once I get to 30 of these overlap groups, I don't want to see any of them. But as long as the number of that overlap group, notice I'm doing SI module index +1, as long as that's less than or equal to the total number of numbers that I'll have, I always want to see it, otherwise I want to remove it. And by us removing it, it's going to keep things centered in this stat group. Now, if I come back to the items for that overlap group, go to the text, let's go look at that text, and this is going to be simply the num. And this is going to return a 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, etc. as you copy and paste these overlap groups inside of the stat group. Coming down to the size, now that I showed you that crazy code, all we have to do is type in GV the size. And then if I come on over to the paint, looking at the code for the paint, if GV the num is equal to the current num, then I want to return the current color. And if these are not equal, then I want to return that other color. Once you apply those settings to this text item that sits inside of this overlap group, all you have to do is take that overlap group and copy and paste it, and bam, you'll have all of these numbers and some. For example, if I come down here to 31, 31's the most number of overlap groups I need, since in this particular case, the most number of days you can have in a month is 31. So if I come to this overlap group 31, we don't see the 31 down here because this layer is set to remove. Whereas if I back out of here and I go to the overlap group number 30, you can see that red box showing there, and that layer is set to visible. Now again, you would need more overlap groups if you were doing seconds in a minute or something like that, and you would have to change some of the codes. But the request I got was to show the total number of days in a month and have a gradual size build up to that current day. And there you have it, a different type of series where we gradually build up the size to the current day of the month. And again, you can find this component in my free components folder. It is called Gradual Dates. If you have any questions, leave a comment below. And that's it for this video. I hope it helped.